He tries to predispose people to see what he will say as unique, even though it isn't. A core pillar of manipulation, which is to preach independence, but to breed dependence into people. So he wants to counteract any of the objections that people might have towards exploring the manipulation techniques found in the second video of Digital Renaissance by Iman Gadzhi. And first of all, why does he need multiple videos rather than making one huge, big video that covers everything? The reason is the deepest persuasion happens during absence. What does this mean? When he does his manipulation work, the subconscious of his victims basically needs time to process the inputs and turn them into part of their reality. So if he tried to do it all in one spot, it will feel subconsciously rushed, and therefore he will get a lot more no's, and those who buy, a lot of them will refund. That absence or the gap between videos creates even deeper persuasion, because basically people will persuade themselves and will think whatever he said during those videos is their own idea.
So in life, some men get to play by different rules, but you have to earn that right. It's funny that
what is he doing there? And I know it's from the beginning, he's going for the jugular. He is creating an aspirational identity which allows him to play with the motivation, the move towards motivation of human beings and their audience. So when he defined and labeled this category and said it's men who don't have to play by the rules, he can define how to get there, what does it mean, how they should behave, all in ways that make him more money, and trains his clients and his audience to behave in ways that he wants them to behave. And that's why he added that part of you have to earn that right. Well, to earn it from whom, how, where, it's not specified, but because he will explain how to earn that right, well, he is creating the path or the track that allows them to earn that right, which he can modify or choose whatever characteristics will make him more money.
that's actually something my mother told me many times growing up, and it always stuck with me. And if you've ever been to a museum,
what is he doing there? Two things. One, he's calling back to his narrative arc or story of growing up with his mother and taking care of her. Also, a lot of his audience is to teenagers, so a relationship with a mother is something they can aspire to or relate to, as well as it's part of the likability in creating characters that are compelling in storytelling, screenwriting, movies, and novels, where a character is not only successful, exceptional, and having all the other elements that are around 7, but an important one is likability, and he is showing likability, which therefore goes to an old pickup formula that R.S.D. Tyler likes to use, which is value, attainability, compliance. So by speaking as if he knows what it takes to be one of those men who don't need to follow the rules, it means he's one of them or surrounded by them, which means he is elite and therefore elevating his status by implication, which is the value part. He creates attainability by talking about his mother from the very beginning. And remember, this is the second video, so part of the persuasion was already done in the first video. They are already primed, and some of those suggestions and manipulative beliefs already took hold within them, so he's just building upon that.
Amusement park, you probably noticed that there's two lines. There's the regular line, where people surprisingly wait for 2-3 hours just to get on a ride and have 3 minutes of fun and enjoyment. And the second one is called the fast track lane, and this is where people skip the queues, skip the lines, and they just go straight into the fun, and they do it as much as they want, however many times they want, and they just walk by the other 99% that are in line.
What is he doing there? He's using metaphor, which according to Cialdini is the most powerful persuasive tool of them all. And if you go to an argumentation or logic class or debate class, they will not accept metaphor as a valid way to argue, but it's very persuasive to the human mind. Why? Because the fact you said this is similar to that doesn't mean they're identical, and therefore you cannot use the metaphor to create a conclusion about reality, because then you can use this same metaphor of the roller coaster ride where you can say it's much more fun if you go there with family. Now you think, oh, life when surrounded by family is better. Or is the anticipation that's the best part. The reality of it is you almost feel like you're throwing up all along the ride. Or you don't do it for yourself, you do it for the children. Or whatever it is that could be implied, or any conclusion that can be created through the metaphor, which is not reality, it's just a tool that is very persuasive.
Wait, have you noticed that is eerily similar to what goes on in real life? There are people that get to skip the lines. There are people who get to play by different rules. As I said,
eerily similar. What does that mean? It means it's not identical, but it's a weasel word that he uses often to slip in whatever beliefs he wants to engineer that are necessary for the sale. And notice that he will soften it when he introduces the belief, and then suddenly he will use it as a fact that he will build upon as if it was proven. But every time he introduces it, he will say, I feel like it's eerily similar, or use in a metaphor, which is a softener, but at the same time, it's not a valid logical argument, but it's very persuasive for manipulators.
it's as if the rules simply don't apply to them. And by the way, it's not because they're disrespectful rule breakers, it's because they're playing a different game entirely. A game where they get to live life and set their own terms. And these are the people who...
Now he's using a second metaphor of life as a game, and people playing different games within life. So he's stacking metaphors from the very beginning to make sure that the point comes across and seeps into the subconscious of the people, which means that is the big idea that this whole video is focused on, which is a copywriting technique. And all he will do within this whole video is magnify, prove, and show the big idea from different angles. And when I say prove, it's prove in a way that is more rhetorical rather than factual, but it makes him a lot of money.
Successfully managed to escape the grip and the control of the puppet masters. So you basically have two options. You can either keep playing a rigged game for your entire life, or you can work your way out of the current game that you're playing and start playing a new game altogether. And just as my very forward Russian mother told me...
What is he doing there? He's creating what is called the crossroads clause in copywriting, where he gives people two choices, and that illusion of choice is an investment. So the person will feel like, if I keep watching this video, I am choosing the second track, the game where the rules don't apply to me, where I escape the puppet masters. And because it seems like their own personal decision, it creates commitment and consistency, and therefore they're much more likely to buy just because they kept watching after that part. Because those who would not accept that, and I know he framed it in a way where 99.99% of people will choose the second track, which is on purpose, that they will choose, no, I don't want to be under the grip of the puppet masters, using a little bit of the bully method that Andrew Tate does, but it's very effective. So he's given people the illusion of choice without real choice. And he will make sure they choose what he wants, which creates commitment and consistency, as Cialdini will say, towards him making the big bucks.
Growing up, some men get to play by different rules, but you have to earn that right. So in today's video, I'm going to show you the 5 traits of the top 1% of men who have earned that right. Once you acquire those traits, you too will be able to live life on your own terms.
What is he doing there? Again, like I said, he created this aspirational identity, and now he will define its characteristics, which does two things. One, it means that he is at that level, and therefore he is self-aggrandizing just by speaking as if he is the expert on being a high level, high status, high value man. And secondarily, he can choose any characteristics that will lead to more sales, lead to clients behaving in the way he wants them to, and his viewers and audience getting attached to him even more because they view him as the road to them getting what they want through this aspirational identity of the high value man who gets to not play by the rules that others do.
First trait is they soak up knowledge from ones that have walked the road that they want to walk.
What is he doing there? And it's funny because Mystery, the old pickup guy, he had a similar thing where he used to say, the best leaders are also the best followers. What does he do? It's all part of a core pillar of manipulation, which is to preach independence, but to breed dependence into people. So he wants to counteract any of the objections that people might have towards his sale by saying, oh, I'm a Sigma male, bro, I don't need a leader, I won't follow nobody, I'll just figure it out. He wants to overcome this by changing, and the same way that Andrew Tate, where he changes the definition of being his slave almost, or of being his obedient peon, to meaning you are on a path towards glory. So now he is changing the definition of being his follower as you having the characteristics that make you the elite high status male, which means the more you obey him, the more you comply with what he wants, the more you are high status and high value, which works to his own benefit. Derek Moneyberg does that. So watch my video about that specifically. He had a long video where he said the one trait of elite clients that are the most successful. And again, in it, it's people who apply what he tells them to do right away without fuss, without complaining, without hesitation, being very good followers. And that makes them the most successful clients. So this seems to be a commonality between all the best manipulators, that they focus on this pillar.
One of the most misunderstood and overlooked skills for those who want to become a new Renaissance man. I mean, look, for you to ascend the ranks and get into the upper echelon of life, it seems pretty obvious that you're going to need to know something that the other 99% don't. That's a fact, and there's no other way around it. So if you want to become a top 1% man, you need to acquire knowledge that the others simply don't have. You need to develop your mind the exact same way that you develop your body in the gym. And I will say, there's a big misunderstanding when it comes to acquiring knowledge, because not all knowledge is created equally. Now, there's a big misunderstanding when it comes to acquiring knowledge, because not all knowledge will have the same effect on your life. Now,
what is he doing there? He is trying to not educate other people's customers, because some might run with this and think, wow, I will get this knowledge from the library, from other people, but he wants to place himself as the unique source of that knowledge so that he captures as much of the sales and as much of the minds as possible, rather than leaving them to go to competitors.
All knowledge is created equal. And it's not just any type of knowledge that will take you to the top. In fact, most knowledge out there won't even just keep you stagnant, it will actually hold you back. Because fundamentally, there are two different types of knowledge. There's conceptual knowledge and there's empirical knowledge. Conceptual knowledge is the one that you acquire in school or by spending 5 years studying some pointless degree in university. I mean, look, if you study something like economics or finance or entrepreneurship in college, no doubt it will take you a lot of time to acquire that knowledge, and it will also be a very painstaking process. But this information you acquire at colleges is simply conceptual knowledge. And by that, I mean information that has been studied for decades and has conceptual backbone behind it that ties it together through principles that are backed by theory. Here's the problem. 99% of conceptual knowledge is just that. It's theories. It's things that sound nice or maybe worked in the past, but sure as hell do not work right now. And
look, now he's doing the same thing as Jordan Peterson, where he is redefining terms, so that he is redefining what it means to be a theory to something that worked in the past or doesn't work. It's just idealization, which is not the reality of the meaning of a theory, but he's using that the same way that in the first video he used the definition of man, where he was speaking about during the Middle Ages, the Vatican Church was saying that man is evil, and he's saying, oh, they hate masculinity too during the medieval times, but he is overlooking that they used man as mankind for men and women equally. So he redefined that term in ways that served him best. But this too, he is changing the meaning of theory to something that doesn't work, to a waste of time, or something that worked in the past. But then even empirically, then you can say, well, it's what you did yesterday doesn't mean it will work today or whatever. So, but I am sure he will find a different angle to position his digital Renaissance course as the empirical knowledge they need, rather than going to competitors or to university or to books that are theories, which he is defining as something bad.
And what happens is you go to college and you spend 5 years and you think you're very smart and you think you're learning all this stuff and all these concepts and all of these different frameworks for the world and how things work, and then you get into the real world and you realize that none of it applies. You may know how to write a business plan, but you sure as hell don't know how to start a business. You may know a product market fit, but you don't actually know how to create a product that the market actually wants. And that is always what happens when you learn conceptual knowledge, especially if you look at university professors, by people that have never, ever, ever actually done it themselves. So when I say that you need to acquire knowledge that you don't currently possess, I'm not talking about conceptual knowledge here, because at the end of the day, you would not be able to apply it in the real life. So you're going to get no further than other people. And at the end of the day, just because you can do something doesn't mean you should. Just because you can get a university degree doesn't mean that you should or it's worth it at all. So what you need is empirical knowledge.
So now he is countering the objection of people, especially teenagers that are watching him, deciding to go to university. So he will tell them investing and spending money on digital Renaissance is better than getting a degree. But this is a very, very long story, because the educational system, I know for a fact, was built to create very good employees, and therefore its purpose is not to create entrepreneurs, and it's not even about the knowledge being conceptual or not. The whole framework is about memorizing and regurgitating what will please the teacher. So it's not really useful in real life. But the same thing here applies.
What actually fueled the Renaissance? What were the ingredients in that explosive development of that era? Well, it was a deep admiration those great men had for the even greater men that came before them. The Greeks, the Romans, the Arabs, the Byzantines. The Renaissance men studied deeply the achievements, the accomplishments, the worldview, the philosophies of all of these great civilizations. Basically,
that's really counter to his argument even. because philosophy by definition is conceptual. All those cultures, what they studied during the Renaissance age, were all theories, perspectives, philosophies that are not very, very practical, and they turned it through skill as well into practicality. But that is counter to his argument that all conceptual knowledge is useless. Well, philosophy is super conceptual, and he mentioned it as one of the things that the Renaissance period studied. And it's details like this that show contradiction in his valid argument and the validity of his argument that show you that he is playing with language in order to create an impression that what he's talking about are facts, when in reality he is just framing things and taking away what doesn't serve him making the sale and only keeping what makes him more money, even though it's not the complete picture.
See, they look back at some of the most successful people in history to date, and they reverse engineer the processes so that way they could build a roadmap for the future. And by doing that, the Renaissance men were able to embrace such knowledge and apply it to their life. That, my friends, is empirical knowledge. Empirical knowledge is going out in the real world, having things happen, getting reference experiences, and from there learning, rather than building theories and concepts and then maybe potentially testing them. The most successful people I know today have a lot of empirical knowledge. That is knowledge that they acquired by going out there, trying things, building these feedback loops, getting these references, and moving from there.
It's not exactly like that. This is a big concept that I have to speak about, and it includes talking about the Pareto principle and chaos theory and how life works, etc. It's not exactly that way, but because he is selling a course that is based on processes he has developed for the digital renaissance, he needs to sell the belief, and that's the second belief within the chain of beliefs in this specific video, which is that you should not chase conceptual knowledge, but you should go for empirical knowledge. What does that mean? It's a lot more complicated than this black and white thinking, but it's a complex equivalence because human brains like simple answers to very complex problems. And therefore, by presenting the need for empirical knowledge, when he will later on say that, oh, digital renaissance is empirical, it's tried and true, it's based on the real world, he already established this belief. So they will think, I was exactly thinking that I need something like that, and that he will do that probably in the next video, so they have time to forget that he said it, but to keep that belief in the background of their minds, persuading themselves. And like I said, persuasion, the most powerful persuasion happens between persuasive sessions.
I've seen those videos on YouTube where people go around asking millionaires what best advice for 18-year-olds who are just getting started with their careers. And you'll notice their answers are always sort of along the lines of put your head down and work a lot, or try a lot of things, or a lot of times they even say don't go to college, just get a job instead. What these people are really trying to say is acquire empirical knowledge, because they know that's what makes someone successful. They know
he is redefining things, and they're correct. I will have to speak about this another time, another day, but he is redefining it or reframing it as it is in NLP, saying that this means that, and because people are not really thinking deeply about what those people said, what they're mentioned. Their brain is open to absorb his own definition, and he is defining it in a way that makes him more sales.
The most successful people are the ones that gather empirical knowledge rather than sitting down and listen to a 67-year-old teach you how to create a business plan when he's barely even stepped foot outside of the college campus. So from now on, I always want you to remember, if you're learning things that are conceptual and they're concepts and they're theories and they're not actually practically tested in the real world, and by that I mean battle tested in real world conditions. I'm not talking about, oh, we did a survey and we did a group study and we found it. I'm talking about the shit has been battle tested by someone, and that is how it was formed. You need to learn from sources like that, because at the end of the day, conceptual knowledge at best, it's just mental masturbation. And that's the best case scenario. The worst case scenario is you're being dragged in a totally different and wrong direction. And the Renaissance men already knew this back in the 14th century. That's why they didn't spend much time in classes. Here's how they approach learning instead. And I suggest,
well, too many things. First, in the Middle Ages, I don't think there were classes. Classes and the educational system is a more recent invention, and therefore they couldn't have spent time in classes. Although they did, they would go to the church in order to go to the library or listen to orators, and therefore an equivalent of that was happening. But what he's creating now is stakes, which is increasing the consequences of this alternative he doesn't want people to do, so that they will not even attempt it, because he is creating a level of danger to their lizard brain that will associate it with that choice, and therefore he is eliminating it simply through using clever tricks of language and movements of the energy within the presentation.
that you do the same. They would send researchers to travel throughout Europe scouting monasteries, courts, and libraries for lost or often overlooked texts from kings, architects, inventors, and philosophers from the Roman Empire, the Greeks, the Arabs, the Byzantines, and the Indians. Then they would deeply research these findings and implement it into their own worldview. And that's how they would.
What is he doing there? Literally, like I read many of those books that are written in that time, and they're 100% conceptual or 90% conceptual, and they're all about theories, etc. But he's now changing it and redefining it and understand he defines things in the ways he needs in order to sell more. So he's saying, oh, those books, they reverse engineered them in order to use them practically in their real lives. Yes and no, they use the concepts, which is the general idea, and then you can personalize it to your own life. So, of course, I disagree with this, but it doesn't matter because he's not saying what he believes. What he's saying is exactly what he needs to be true in order for the sale to become easy, automatic, and plentiful.
Arabs, the Byzantines, and the Indians. Then they would deeply research these findings and implement it into their own worldview. And that's how they went from having very rudimentary, simple art to having 5-meter-long, perfect statues. Characteristics which were unknown during the Middle Ages and to this day have still created some of the most beautiful works of art ever. That's why after centuries of oblivion, long-forgotten engineering techniques were suddenly rediscovered and triggered a new wave of innovation that was pushed forward by those Renaissance men. Basically, what they were doing was actually quite simple. They would find successful people who possess a lot of empirical knowledge and would study the shit out of them so that way they could acquire the same knowledge and apply it in their work. And that, my friend, is exactly what I recommend you do.
He changed it. So now, before he was saying that they found the books from the old time and rediscovered what was contained within them. And now he's saying they found the most successful people and studied what they were doing, which now he is presenting himself as a very successful person who will offer them the opportunity to study what he is doing in exchange of cash money. So basically, he is playing very, very good tricks that people who are not paying attention will simply just follow and blindly fall into those traps that will simply create and engineer the beliefs he needs in order to see his offer as indispensable.
Find someone who is successful and who you aspire to be like and study their stuff from top to bottom. Try to find out how they do things, how they structure their business, how they structure their work, how they think about the world, and what are their methods. And then go ahead and apply what you learned in your own life and your own career. And look, gentlemen, that is the only way to be successful, is find someone who has done what you aspire to in life and emulate that. And even better, if they have laid out a game plan, follow it to a T, step by step.
What is he doing there? And remember, notice what he said. That's the only way to be successful in life and follow their game plan to a T. Well, the same way as in those spiritual philosophers, etc., where they say it's turtles all the way down. I think it's in Hindus. Who did they learn from in the very beginning? Who was the first person that they studied and emulated to a T? Someone needed to be the originator. And secondarily, if everybody is copying everybody, then it's again his own blame on the educational system that it's things that used to work in the past, not things that are working right now. Well, if you're copying what someone else did to be successful, and that person, because it's the only way, as he said, also copied someone else and everybody copied the same thing. Well, it's things that are from the very, very past and they're not up to date anymore, but nobody will notice this logical invalidity because nobody's paying attention like you and me.
And look, that is the formula for success. It's been like that since the 14th century and the Renaissance. So simply apply it. And the second trait you need in order to become a top 1% man who gets to play by his own rules is community. And it's really one of those traits that most people don't give enough attention to, and quite frankly, why a lot of people fail at their endeavors.
Notice also the very beginning of every trait, he says, not a lot of people pay attention to this because secrets and hidden knowledge are very attractive to people. It makes them pay attention, as well as if he is saying something that it seems other people are saying, then he doesn't stand out. He's not necessary. He becomes a commodity. And therefore, he tries to predispose people to see what he will say as unique, even though it isn't, because community, he's not the only one speaking about it. It's very common, but now he's saying, oh, it's overlooked, it's blah, 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 which to people who have no experience, the teenagers watching him, they have no idea whether that's real or not, so they accept it. And because he will sell within his course community, so he sells practical emulation of his own processes for doing business. That was the first part of the 5 criteria, which is what he needs in order to make the sale. So he will act as if this was accepted. The second part is community. And of course, he will sell community within his course. And now he's making it as a trait of high status, high value males, which is also against the Sigma grind set. So how can the people who are watching him believe in being Sigmas and in community? You see, each person is creating their own framework that they try to convince people of, and it's all in general people saying what is necessary for them to sell their courses rather than what they truly believe.
Notice that whenever very important influential people who really change the course of the world pop up, they don't ever pop up in isolation. There's a few different people who kind of pop up at the same time. As in, it's never really just one scientist or one philosopher that carries an era. Whenever the world experiences an era of fast development, there's always a bunch of people creating and discovering a bunch of different things.
Look, is this proven? Is this something that he provided any statistics or proof of? It's just something that people will accept because they don't have any concrete beliefs on this, and therefore he can easily, just using words, create this belief. And look, he's showing a photo of Thomas Edison and a Tesla. And now he's saying, yeah, two great minds that are popping up at the same time. Well, a lot of people will tell you that Thomas Edison did nothing. He was just the same as Iman Gadzhi, just a good salesman, and that Tesla and people like Tesla did all the inventions and all the work, and Edison took the credit for it. But now he is using it in a different way to say, look, two amazing innovators and engineers, they're in community together to change the world, which is not the reality. But when people look at it, it looks good and it looks like it makes sense.
At the same time, just like the Renaissance, I mean, there wasn't one sole person that was responsible for the Renaissance. There's Leonardo da Vinci, there's Michelangelo, there was Copernicus, there was Galileo. The list really goes on. And you also notice that there's hubs, there's little places that these people will congregate, and from that magic would happen. Just like today, the most famous movies all come from Hollywood, and the most successful apps all come from Silicon Valley. And back in the Renaissance, the majority of
Oh, no, this is beautiful. So he is saying the hub and the community, there are small spaces to say that the forum or whatever he will create with his membership will be that hub for the new Renaissance. So it's beautifully done. This is very good.
The inventions and famous work of art came from Florence. And that's because men have a community nature. We like to congregate and we like to gather in groups and really feed off of each other's energy. You know, the sum of what a group of men can achieve together is far greater than these men acting individually on their own.
This is a point that he took from Andrew Tate, and I noticed after Andrew Tate popped up, he took a lot of his talking points and incorporated them into himself. He added a lot of the personality of Andrew Tate into himself and reinvented himself slightly to become a supposedly younger version of Andrew Tate, including what he said in the beginning, that some men don't have to play by the rules, but you have to earn that right. That was very inspired from Andrew Tate's talks at the time.
You've heard the term that you're the sum of 5 people you spend the most time with, and that's not necessarily just because you guys share the same worldview. It's actually for a different reason. And that is, as humans, we never operate at our maximum capacity. I mean, we can do it for a few days, maybe even.
And notice, and that's for a different reason. It's called reframing, and therefore, again, he's creating a complex equivalence because the human brain wants one answer to everything. So it couldn't be that all those factors are contributing to whatever is the outcome. He's like, no, the real reason. And how did he prove it? Is there any proof, anything? No, just because he said the real reason. Now he's leaning on his seeming authority and credibility in order to pass this belief through to the subconscious by appealing to his pseudo-authority.
In a few weeks, we are not built to operate at 100%. So here is what happens. Over the long term, we start to operate at our minimum hygiene standard. You see, there's a threshold within you of what you consider to be your max performance and your minimum hygiene standards. And no matter how hard you work, you will always default back to your minimum hygiene standards. But there's a twisted secret here. Our minimum hygiene standards are not fixed. They are adaptable and more important.
Look, there is a twisted secret here. That's again a weasel word he uses. He has a lot of things going on in this video, really. It's very well done.